Our reputation is everything. Our standing as a good doctor is everything. The esteem of our peers is everything. The esteem of our patients is everything. We've given so much of our lives, so many hours, so many things we've missed, first steps and funerals and all that stuff we missed in the name of becoming a good doctor. And that's just woven into our DNA. And so when someone comes along, I mean, when you read a complaint, and what's interesting is when you learn more about this, most of the stuff that's in the complaint is boilerplate. And it's all language that says you're basically the worst person that ever walked the face of the earth. And you did this and you did this and you did, willingly, wantonly do all this sorts of harm. And it makes you sound like the world's greatest villain.
Welcome to How I Doctor, where we're bringing joy back to medicine. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Gita Pensa, fellow emergency physician, educator, and nationally recognized advocate for physicians around malpractice litigation. She's usually not just a podcast guest, but she actually hosts her own highly rated podcast, Doctors in Litigation, the L Word. Gita's own 12-year legal battle, which included 2 jury trials, gave her a rare and deeply personal perspective on how lawsuits impact not just a doctor's career, but their identity, their relationships, and mental health. I'm excited to talk to Gita today because litigation is one of, I think, the greatest unspoken fears in medicine and impacts how we interact with patients and how we actually see ourselves as physicians. Dr. Pensa's story isn't just about surviving the process, but finding a way to come out stronger on the other side. Dr. Gita Pensa, thank you for being here. Welcome to How I Doctor.
Graham, thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm really happy to be here.
Gita, we have not somehow talked about malpractice, and I'm so, I can't say excited to talk with you today about it, but I think it's an important topic that is honestly always in the back of our minds.
It's interesting that you say that because I'm not surprised that it hasn't come up yet. It was probably like 8 or 9 years ago, one of those big medical websites sent out their burnout survey. And I looked at it and I took it, and there wasn't one single question about malpractice litigation or litigation stress on there. So I emailed the editors like, well, how can you not ask about this? Like, this is really important. But people were not even asking the questions, even a decade ago, which, it just shows how much shame we have around this and how much denial we have around it, and the ways in which we try to hide from it.
We often talk about burnout and stresses of doing residency and working crazy hours and flipping your shifts, certainly in emergency medicine. But I think one of the most feared things that people actually think about is getting a letter or a notice that says, you're being named in a lawsuit.
I know it does. I certainly know that it did for me. And that's the experience with the healthcare professionals that I work with now. And I work with not just doctors, it's predominantly doctors, but now really almost every kind of healthcare clinician gets sued. So PAs get sued, NPs get sued, social workers get sued, dentists get sued. And for all of them, if it's a serious case, most of them will tell you that it is one of the most singular and stressful events of their professional career, if not their life.
Yeah. I mean, Gita, can you even remember like the down to the second or the minute or the location where you found out I was getting sued?
Oh, yeah. It's a highly traumatic entry into a highly traumatic process. And as such, yeah, I definitely remember. And I was, this is way back I saw this patient in 2006, and then I got served in 2007. And I remember everything. I remember getting the notice. I remember trying to read it, and the words just all sort of mixing up together, and having to read it again, and hyperventilating and wanting to vomit and needing to sit down and having this whole spin out of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And then having to go in and work a shift.
I think this is common. You're going to find out about a work thing at work. Mm-hmm. It's probably not at the end of your day that you're finding this information out.
Well, it could be anywhere. People get served at home. They get also all over the place. Wherever it is, it's a terrible and traumatic entry into the. I mean, the worst, for me, it was just delivered to the hospital. But for a number of people, it's a sheriff who's delivering a summons to them at their place of work, or in front of all of their patients, or at home. In the podcast, I talk to people who got served at home on Christmas Eve or the day after their father's funeral or Thanksgiving dinner.
You've called malpractice litigation the second trauma for physicians. What do you mean by that?
For the clinician who's being sued, litigation is traumatic. And as such, I mean, I think in sort of the overall psychological definition of trauma, it's when something difficult happens that exceeds your ability to cope with it. And for a lot of physicians, because we've never had it taught to us or role modeled to us in any way, because everybody's hidden their experience in it.
It's unspoken. It's silent. Yeah, you're told don't mention this to anybody.
And we have no information.
Yeah.
If anything, maybe you got a lecture on the 4 elements of negligence, and someone comes in and tells you these are the elements of negligence. And somehow we believe that like all of those things need to be met before someone files a lawsuit. We have no understanding, none whatsoever, about the system or our role in it, and least of all, how we are to contend with this real threat to identity. It's a threat to who we are, and we've carefully crafted our identities around our idea of what it is for us to be a doctor. And this comes in and in our minds threatens to tear it all down, not to mention that we're probably grieving whatever happened in the adverse event, if it's something that was really catastrophic and we do remember it and know exactly what happened. We've got that to contend with. And this is something that lasts for years. I mean, even if you're someone who feels like they ought to get dropped any day, you're probably in it for a couple of years minimum. So it is a traumatic experience that's very different from other kinds of trauma that we're prepared to deal with in medicine. We're prepared to deal with difficult patient scenarios. And we're prepared to deal with the workload and seeing grisly things at work and these terrible traumatic stories that we take on for other people. We don't know how to handle this, though.
Just hearing you say that, it's really interesting. We certainly in the ER, we see some stuff. I'm giggling because that's my trauma response to just, the terrible things that we see that happen to human beings on a daily basis. And it's so interesting because for so much of emergency medicine, and I think this is probably true in other specialties, there's a gallows humor. There's a sense of sharing with your colleagues and that is one way to deal with the chaos and the suffering that we see of patients and what happens in the world. But this is one area where you're actually almost like verboten from saying a word to a single other person. So we've almost taken away the one thing that doctors, nurses, dentists, whoever, pharmacists, whoever it is, maybe use to help process some of the really messed up stuff that we are expected to just kind of deal with on a daily basis.
What we know about trauma is that it is best processed by talking about it with an empathetic person who can receive that. And we're completely deprived of that. I don't know of any other scenario in which you'd take an individual and you'd traumatize them, and then the party
and tell
line,
them it's a secret trauma.
The party line is it's a secret, right? The party line is you're told by everybody, don't talk about it, which I think is both misguided and cruel. And I do think that we are able to discern the difference between talking about all of the case details in a way that might compromise our case and the fact that this is happening and the legal events are happening and the generalities of the complaint, which are, spelled out and, you could look that up if you wanted to. So these are things that are in the public record. So we can learn how to walk that line.
If you could go back to 2007, to that moment, knowing now in 2025, all that you've learned about malpractice and litigation, what would you tell Dr. Pensa? What advice would you give her?
One is that my career is so much more than this one case. Like the spotlight is going to be on this for years. But my real worth as a person is much more related to the thousands upon thousands of other people that I've treated over, I don't want to say how many years. I graduated from med school in 97, the late 1900s, like my kids like to say, but it's been a long road, right? And so my career is way more than that. This is something hard and difficult to deal with. But number two, it doesn't actually mean anything. It's what you find is when you get into litigation, we want to believe that legal outcomes say something about how good the care was, and they don't. They just don't. It's not a system that's equipped to make those decisions. Like it's adjudicated by jurors, and before that point, it's argued by lawyers, none of whom know medicine, or by experts who are paid on both sides. And judges don't understand medicine. Nobody in this system actually, well, that isn't getting paid, actually understands medicine, the practice of medicine, your medical decision making. I'm here to tell you that, unfortunately, this is not the system that we deserve in terms of something that actually adjudicates our care, because it's very important to us. We want to know, did we do the right thing? And the legal outcome is something different than that. The civil litigation system is simply a system to resolve disputes. That's what it's set up for. It was never meant to say whether or not you did the right thing that day.
Generative AI prompting is a skill that's going to give you better AI answers, and it's critical to learn in this ever-changing healthcare AI world. But here's the thing, no one ever taught you how to prompt as a clinician, so I will. We're inviting you to join me and Dr. Matt Sakamoto for Prompting Techniques for Clinicians, a live webinar brought to you by Offcall. It's on Wednesday, September 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll show you live demos, practical frameworks, and prompts you can actually use starting right now. Register at offcall.com/learn. Join the conversation, bring your questions, and see how AI is really being used in medicine today. I get the feeling that, like, maybe for a hospital or a business, to them, it's like the cost of doing business. And in a way, that probably is like emotionally protective that, like, well, yeah, we're in the business of healthcare. We are going to get sued some amount. And that's why we have malpractice insurance. And that's why we expect for this to happen. But it doesn't feel like the individual takes it that way. It's a personal attack on you as a physician. And because physicians our identity is so deeply intertwined with being a doctor, it probably feels like an extremely personal, like, dagger to the heart.
Our reputation is everything. Our standing as a good doctor is everything. The esteem of our peers is everything. The esteem of our patients is everything. We've given so much of our lives, so many hours, so many things we've missed. First steps and funerals and all that stuff we missed in the name of becoming a good doctor, and that's just woven into our DNA. And so when someone comes along, I mean, when you read a complaint, and what's interesting is when you learn more about this, most of the stuff that's in the complaint is boilerplate. And it's all language that says you're basically the worst person that ever walked the face of the earth. And you did this, and you did this, and you did, willingly, wantonly do all this sorts of harm. And
you intentionally.
Yeah. It makes you sound like the world's greatest villain. And so, people will tell you, don't take it personally. And that's impossible. It's impossible for
it's like,
us.
it's just business.
No.
It's like, well, no, it doesn't.
It's not. It's not just business. And so it's the outcome. I didn't mean to say earlier that the outcome shouldn't matter to us. It does, very much so. We want a legal outcome that reflects our care, and that we, especially when we rendered good care, like we want that to happen. We want those things to align. But we take it so far in terms of feeling like the outcome means everything about us. There are so many people that I've worked with that, their insurance company wants to settle a case. They really don't feel like there was fault in that regard. And they think about being in the data bank as literally some kind of, it's almost a death sentence for them. So the National Practitioner Data Bank, most people have heard, like, if you lose a trial, or you have a serious complaint against you, or you a settlement, you will be entered into this National Practitioner Data Bank, which is not something that on your own, like a regular patient, should be able to go access. Some state departments of health have chosen to post things that happen in the data bank that are meant to be privately in the data bank. They've made them more public. But the data bank is really for, employers and government agencies to be able to, the whole point is to stop the truly bad doctor,
Yeah.
the whatever doctor deaths out there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there aren't some, they are, but of course they're
Yeah.
seriously the minority. But to stop them from being able to go from like state to state and place to place and just pick up where they left
Continue to
off.
harm patients. Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we don't want that, obviously. So there has to be some sort of system for that. And it'll rankle you on one hand because a lot of times in a settlement, they will be saying that this is not to us any admission of any kind of liability whatsoever. And yet, the doctor winds up in the data bank and it feels bad. It doesn't mean anything about your care. And so, on the one hand, you can't just sort of dismiss it and be like, this isn't important. It is important. And it is important that we show up and we defend our care and we defend the practice of medicine, which I think we should do. We deserve to do. But on the other hand, you also don't want it to mean everything about you. You can work hard to get the outcome that you want legally, but you also can't make this mean everything about you can't ride on this outcome.
Yeah, it seems like it's that data bank thing sounds like it's on your permanent record, or you've got a scarlet letter that permanently marks you.
You're in very good company. It's litigation is so common. It's so common. And, depending on your specialty, an OB in a litigious state is going to rack up like double digits, no problem, over the course of a 25, 30, 35-year career. Like that happens. It really depends. A lot of it depends on where you practice and what field you're in. But it is really not unusual when you've been practicing for a while to wind up in the data bank.
To me, it feels like maybe there's a angle on defensive medicine there. Does the fear of getting sued change how we practice medicine? And I wonder what your answer would have been to that in 2005. And then do you feel like defensive medicine is a thing, or is it just in certain circumstances? Or
I think that defensive medicine is real. I think that it's a real thing because most times you'll talk to someone and then in the wake of something, you'll be super ultra careful. I mean, the truth is there's always a spectrum in terms of who practices more conservatively and, who orders a CT on everybody who walks in the door. There's just a natural, there's a natural variance there, right? And a lot of it has to do with your risk tolerance in terms of how much risk you're willing to take on in the name of practicing judicious medicine. And that's a line we have to walk all the time. But I'll tell you that every time a resident would come up to me and present a patient that had anything to do with, my case was about a young woman who had a stroke, right? Anything to do with a young woman that might have something to do with like a neurologic problem, I'd be like, MRI, don't. But I would preface it by saying, like, you need to understand something. Like, I don't know if I'm the right person for you presenting this to because I spent like 12 years of my life, traumatized by one of these cases. And so I'm going to tell you to get the MRI. And I say that unapologetically because I am a thinking, learning human being that was told pretty in no uncertain terms, right? That if the choice is like this or this, you better order that MRI. I know there have been some studies out there and they're interesting. Like, okay, if we did tort reform in one state, did the ordering of XYZ go down? I'm not shocked that it didn't show that there was a huge reduction because what doctors don't want to be is sued in the first place. They don't want to be wrong. We're not okay with being wrong. And so I'm not shocked. But certainly when you've been burned, you're going to be cautious. And that pendulum might swing back over time, but it takes time.
The headline I've seen is that ordering more tests kind of doesn't protect doctors, or it doesn't reduce lawsuits. Do you think that's true, or do you think it's like a total non sequitur? It probably doesn't matter.
I don't think you could make a generalized statement. The truth is that, Americans love tests. And in some people's minds, tests are the way you show you care about someone. Like if you're taking me seriously, you send tests. That's sort of a I don't know. That's just a truism, unfortunately, in some people's minds. Like, that's how you show it. I think that the majority of lawsuits, if we're talking about what could be prevented, because I think really the biggest driver of lawsuits is an unexpected adverse event. And I mean, that's where it all starts, right? And if in as much as any of those are preventable, that's one great way to do it. And number two is communication. I think that the more you can communicate to this patient exactly what you're doing, how you're thinking, and mostly how much you actually do care about them and think about them and want them to be okay, the more you communicate your caring, the better off you're going to be. Now, in my case, it's interesting because in the deposition, my patient said I was super nice and I was very communicative and I was very thoughtful and I was in that room a lot. She liked me, but it didn't matter because there was a bad outcome, and so nothing is 100% protective unless somehow you find a magic wand and figure out how to not let any bad things happen.
When I'm scrolling on TikTok or reading through social media forums or something, I get two senses from people outside of healthcare. One is that doctors uniformly do not care about their patients at all. We could care less about our patients, and that we don't want to order the test because we don't care. Like, to your earlier point, we're kind of, withholding the CT scan because we don't care, or we're in the insurance industry's pocket or something like that. I couldn't think there's anything further from the truth. Like, every single doctor I work with thinks about their patients after they go home from a shift all the time.
All the time. And unfortunately, I think that this has just gotten a lot harder. I think it is post-COVID. Just a lot of us have less time, and sometimes it takes time to show you care. Like, we care about all the patients that we see. This is true, right? But communicating that care is an art. And then, the fact that you're a team is hard to do when it's apparent that you're rushed and that, and I feel like, if you've been a patient lately, like I've been a patient lately, and I could see why people feel that, because nobody answers the phone and nobody calls you back and you can't get an appointment. And like the good old days, it's not the same as it was. And everybody wants their doctor to know them and to see them, and to feel for them and empathize with them. And it's very hard to do.
Yeah, it feels like the system is eroding, but the consequence of that erosion is that the doctor-patient trust and that relationship is, maybe it's just what's going first, but it does feel like, I look at a patient that, maybe the next appointment is in 7 months or something like that. It's like, yeah, I totally get why you're angry and upset, but it's certainly not my fault that the appointment's in 7 months, and it's probably not even the doctor's fault that it's in 7 months either.
But they don't
But
understand
the consequence,
it.
yeah, exactly.
They don't understand it at all. They don't know where to place their ire. And this, bringing it back to litigation, is interesting because there's, it has been historically that doctors would win at trial at least 80-90% of the time. And we're not so sure. Well, yeah, different litigation is different than other types of, like, it's different from criminal litigation. When a physician is going on trial, usually it's because there are experts that back them up, and the insurance company, like, everybody believes in their care and they feel like, we don't want to settle this. We used to be pretty confident that the jurors would have a pro-doctor sentiment. If your medicine was sound, that's usually why you end up going to trial. So most people who go to trial are expecting, or at least strongly hoping, to win because they feel like their care was good. But increasingly now, we're not really sure that the juries feel that way. And there's pretty interesting data that, younger juries, nope, they don't have the same attitudes that older jurors might, if you're talking on sort of a population base. But generally, the national opinion on doctors and healthcare in general is kind of in the toilet. So this is a recipe for, a lot of discontent.
Gita, maybe I can ask you a little bit about, with your experience, where maybe the system could or should go. If you had a magic wand, what would a system look like that acknowledges that we are all human beings? There will be errors, there will be things that we can improve on, and that we want to support patients, but that we want a system that doesn't feel like it puts it all on the physician and it makes such an isolating system for people who dedicated their lives to trying to heal and help.
We have a model. It's called the Michigan model. And it's created by Rick Boothman at the University of Michigan, who is a defense attorney. He's a defense attorney for many, many years, who, as a defense attorney for the University of Michigan, realized like this whole thing is bad for everybody, and created a system of early disclosure where the patients would have absolute transparency, and where within the system, the University of Michigan and teams of doctors, committees of doctors, nurses, et cetera, would actually adjudicate the care and decide whether the care was medically sound or not. And if the care was medically sound, they would, choose to defend that. And if there were errors, they would own them, and they bring the patients in, and the patients have the chance to talk to their doctors, talk to the people who were involved. There is an opportunity for healing. There is an opportunity for learning. There is an opportunity for making people as whole as they can, and for system improvement. And the data to support this is pretty marvelous. I'm in a documentary. It's called A World of Hurt, How Medical Malpractice Fails Everyone. And the story arc in there, it follows three patients or three families. And it shows you the night and day difference between families that go through this sort of typical litigation experience from the plaintiff's perspective and the doctor's perspective, and then a family who goes through a CRP, a communication resolution program, a Michigan model type setup. And just that their story is just marvelous. If you haven't watched it, I'm plugging it. It's only 27 minutes, but it will change your mind about if you're a doubter. We're just so entrenched in this deny and defend culture in medicine, even if the government's asking us to consider it, even if our, doctors are saying we need a better system, we run up against this is the way we've always done it. Don't talk to anybody, say nothing, no comment, we'll see you in court.
Maybe can I just ask you a few questions about, tactical strategy guide for physicians?
Sure.
It's 2007 or 2025 and someone gets served. They get a legal notice in whatever form it is, wherever they are. Are there top things they should do, three things they should do when that happens?
Yes. Number one, I didn't know this. The first thing you do is call your carrier. It's call your
malpractice carrier.
Yeah, that's the first thing you do, is to call them and notify them, and they'll start the process of establishing a claim. But that's call number one. And then they're going to give you a lot of instructions thereafter. And so the second thing that happens is that you're going to get an attorney. And your job really is to, oftentimes the insurance company they'll either assign you somebody or they'll give you a list. Every insurer has a wide roster of defense attorneys that they work with, that they know to be good. And so I would have faith in their, they're not going to, they don't want to lose either. So it's in their best interest to get you a good attorney, right? So I would have faith in the attorney, but you have to make sure it's a good match. If you don't trust them, if you don't like them, if you get the vibe that they don't like you, whatever it is, that's going to be a second step. But after, establishing this relationship with the claims professional. Third is to resist the urge to go in. If you can avoid going into the chart electronically to look at it, try to avoid it. If you have to, if you're like, I don't know who this is, what this is about, okay, you can go in and look at it, but don't change anything. No addenda, no delete, nothing, because this EMR audit trail, the electronic medical record, has a memory. And it knows exactly who logged in, where they were, what they did, what they printed, how long they spent looking at something, what they deleted, what they added, when they did it. And so you're going to get fried. So don't touch it. And then I would say that you should tell people who care about you that this is happening.
Your family, your
How
therapist,
about
whoever
that?
it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever it is, this is happening. The details, what's in the complaint, as I said, is public record. So if you speak in generalities, that's not discussing the details of your care. If you say, I'm involved in a wrongful death suit, I saw this person in the ER, and they'd say, that's it. That's all you have to say, really. And people around you will know that that's hard. I think it's okay to trust your, trusted colleagues with it. Be careful, because sometimes people are co-defendants. And so you just have to learn how to walk that line. I think there are still attorneys who get upset when I give that advice. I think it's in everybody's best interest to have a defendant who is emotionally able to handle the rigors of litigation. Because when they're stuck in this place of like abject fear, panic, catastrophizing, they're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're going to make more mistakes. First of all, like that's not a good place to practice medicine from. But also, like, this is not a clear-headed defendant who's going to be an asset to your case. They're not. And the physician could be their strongest asset. They really could. A defendant who is so emotionally reactive and they're driven by shame and they're not sleeping and they're taking, God knows what to try to cope with their, with all of these emotions. That's not helping anybody. And it happens a lot. And so we need for doctors to be able to rally support around them.
Do you have tips for finding what's a right attorney, a good attorney look like? Is it all vibes? Is it a general sense of, is it a general sense of like, oh, I can communicate with this person.
Yeah.
I like their personality. Is it, how are you?
How do you gauge that?
Is it just a sense of, yeah.
Well, first of all, you want to know, you kind of want to know their trial record. Do they try cases? If this is a case that, and you don't know at the beginning, you just don't. But if this smells like maybe this could wind up going to trial, you want to know, have they tried a lot of cases? What's their success record? Fewer now, some younger, because we're going to trials so much less than we used to. A lot of younger attorneys have almost no trial experience.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, so you have to add, they will bring in somebody else to actually try the case,
wow.
Who's a really seasoned trial attorney sometimes. So you want to ask these questions. I also would want to know, how are you going to prepare me for a deposition? Like, how do you get me ready for these medical events? Because for a long time, there's been this sense of like, don't you worry your pretty little head about it. We'll tell you when it's time. And a lot of people find me because, their deposition's coming up and they're going to have a 30-minute Zoom before it. And in the meantime, they've just been stewing in their own juices, and it's not fair. It's not right. And it's also not smart. The deposition it's kind of everything. Like, everything is in the deposition now. What resources do you have for me? How do you prepare me? How do you get me ready? What happens if we go to trial? Like, how much time will they pay with you and will they spend with you in the beginning? Just talking to you about this case. And in a very full circle moment here, do they care about you and your case? Will they give it sufficient time? Can they understand your perspective? Much in the way you would want your doctor to do with you.
Are there any other mistakes that people make along the course that can often be years long?
Yeah. Don't call anybody. Don't call the plaintiff. Don't communicate about this in discoverable media. Don't text people about it. Don't email them about it. Even secure chats in your EMR may not be as secure as you think. So always be professional about what you put in there. It's always best to have just conversations. You actually make a phone call and talk to somebody. But I've seen really big mistakes that people make. Seen people try to call the plaintiff and try to,
can we work this out? Yeah.
Yeah, can't we work this out? Like, no, that's once it's started,
too late.
that's absolutely, it's forbidden. Yeah, you can't do that. That's like witness tampering, basically. You can't do that. So don't make rash decisions, anything like that. Don't, just be be careful and be strategic and smart and take care of yourself.
Do you have any advice for people taking maybe their first job or looking for a new job in terms of malpractice coverage?
Mm-hmm. I do. First, if all other things were equal, check out the malpractice climate in your state. Because I had no idea that Rhode Island was such a, it's a really plaintiff-friendly state. No caps, no tort reform. Just it's that's how it is. I had no idea. Some states have better reputations than others. Ask around about it. If you want to move to Utah just passed legislation where they can't, if you carry $1 million in coverage, the plaintiff's attorney can't go after your personal assets.
Wow. I had never even heard that. Yeah.
If all things were equal, I would move to Utah right now. Like, I would go practice in Utah. That's amazing. That's great. Every state should adopt that kind of legislation. So find out about the malpractice climate and then get someone to read your policy and interpret it for you, your malpractice policy. You should know what's in your policy. You should know whether there's a consent to settle clause in there. You should know whether, like what happens if you go to trial. There's a lot of stuff in there that you ought to know, just like your employment contract. And then that'll help you make a rational decision because it's going to come up at some point, and you should know what's in your policy first.
Dr. Gita Pensa, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. People can check you out at the Doctors in Litigation, the L Word podcast. Gita, are there other places that you send people to learn more about your work that you're doing?
They can find me at doctorsandlitigation.com. That's my website. And through there, pretty soon I'll be announcing the next cohort I have a course called Litigation, Education, and Performance, which is LEAP. And so the LEAP course is CME course where you can kind of just learn the basics of everything that you really need to know about the litigation process and how to deal with it, both practically and psychologically.
Yeah. Well, Gita, I just want to say thank you for supporting our colleagues and educating our colleagues in this space.
I appreciate that, and I'm really glad that you gave me this forum to do it in.
Thanks for joining me today. For interviews with physicians creating meaningful change, check out offcall.com/podcast. You can find How I Doctor on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have new episodes weekly. This has been and continues to be Dr. Graham Walker. Stay well, stay inspired, and practice with purpose.